said to Moses, Moses, you go up there on the mountain and you talk to God and you look at God and you listen to God and you see God, and then you can come back and you can tell us what God said. But if we talk to God, we'll die for sure. Now, to go and read the backstory is to be pretty certain that they're right. God has arranged the meeting with Moses and ordered all the people down from the mountain and away from it, all the animals away from the mountain. Nobody is to come up the mountain with Moses. Moses is to come alone. Mrs. Copple was our junior high English teacher. I always thought Mrs. Copple was a good teacher, and I'm sure she was. It was also true that Mrs. Copple had earned the honorary rank of sergeant as bestowed upon her by her students, though I'm not sure she was ever made aware that she had been given this honorary rank. Well, one day Mrs. Copple left the classroom. She just left the room. She left the students all alone. I'm pretty sure you don't get away with that anymore in schools, but she did that. It was like a lot of Jesus' parables where the farmer or the manager or the vineyard owner or whoever it is sets up the rules and then leaves, just goes. I think it was something of a test where Mrs. Copple was concerned, but I'm an adult now and sometimes it feels like everything's a test, so I'm not really sure. So Mrs. Copple is gone. She's out of the room, and we're all there, all of the students, and we're alone, no teacher. And Mitch Weber and Howard Struby decide it's time to get up out of their seats and start a little bit of commotion. Good guys, Mitch and Howard, they're good guys, but it's just in their nature to be the ringleaders whenever there's to be commotion. And so it wasn't long before a female voice was heard over the intercom. Howard and Mitch, sit down. I don't know if 8th graders startle as easily now as then, but it worked for us. Mitch sat down and Howard sat down. Anybody that was thinking about not sitting down, sat down. And we all got really quiet. Whole 8th grade room quiet, and we learned a geography lesson of sorts in English class that day about that school, and that is that the school office was directly across from that classroom, always had been, and there was a lot of glass, and teachers, you know, they can see through glass, they can. So Moses has the whole law in his hands. The whole thing, that alone could be enough to get you shining with this excitement, I don't know, and certainly it could be enough to scare the students into stunned silence. Too much God on his face. Too much God, a God who might now see something we don't want God to see, an authority figure who's come too close and knows too much. Sometimes people see the pastor that way. I don't know. They maybe not as often as they used to. But you might not mind if all the neighbors know something, but don't anybody let the pastor know. You know, we don't want the pastor to know this. Sometimes folks like the pastor to be like this so that they can sick the pastor on somebody else a little bit. For instance, quite a few years ago in another church, I was asked to marry a young girl to her fiance. And a nice girl she was, very nice girl. She came from a good church family. They weren't a perfect family, and I knew that, but they were a solid family. And the girl was pregnant. And so the mom came to me one day, she said, Reverend Coram, she says, could you try to scare the kids a little bit when you talk to them about getting married? And I thought, myself, I thought, you want me to scare them any more than they probably already are? I don't think I can do that. But what she really wanted me to do, I think, was to tell them how hard marriage was going to be and how they didn't probably realize that. And that they had no idea what they were getting themselves into. Well, I wasn't even married yet then, and so I didn't know how hard their marriage was going to be. I didn't really know what they were getting themselves into. I think the mother just wanted me to throw as much God and law as I possibly could in there, along with all the rest, so that they would at least be shaking in their shoes. Which might not have been a bad idea, I don't really know, but I think I tried. So this is the second time that Moses has gone up the mountain into God's presence, by the way. The first time he dropped the tablets and broke them on the way down. Maybe he was shaking in his shoes, I don't know. Anyway it is, God's given him another try. He said, Moses, you come on up, and by the way, you bring the tablets. So how can they bear all this, God? How can they bear the light on Moses' face? How can they bear all the law and all the commandments, even if they do delight in the same, which some of them, many of them, and many of us will do? But Moses calls them closer. Come on, he says. Come on, you in the back. Come on, a little closer, he says. We began the season of Epiphany with a star in the sky and a child born in a manger. And that is a light we always seem willing and able to bear somehow. But today we have Jesus shining from head to toe on his own mountaintop, with Moses here and Elijah over here, and they're all talking. So how can we bear this? How are we to bear all the law and the prophets and the gospel all in one sitting without being consumed? They're talking about Jesus' death. They're talking about his departure. That's the way Luke says it. Luke makes it a point to remind us that just 8 days ago, Jesus was talking about his own suffering and his own death and his own resurrection, and the call upon those who will hear it to deny self and to take up the cross and to follow. And no sooner have Moses and Elijah faded from view than the cloud appears. A cloud is always a surefire sign of God in Scripture, with a voice telling them to listen to Jesus, something that we've been doing already across these Sundays of Epiphany, only to learn that Jesus' thoughts are not our thoughts and his ways are not our ways. There's no question here that we are dealing with something beyond ourselves, something far greater than our own greatness and our own power. And all the God we can really bear is right here in front of us in these two stories. All the light and all the God and all the law and all the prophetic words and all the good news we can possibly take is right here staring us directly in the face. How do you explain the exorcism? How do you explain the little boy? How do you explain the God who's shining on a mountaintop one day and the next day comes down, heals a boy who's dreadfully ill, handing him back to his parents well and whole again? You can't explain that. You can't. You just can't. It is God after all. You know, the indescribable greatness of God has reached down to earth, to where we are. How do you, don't try to explain God. Luke says, and all were astounded at the greatness of God. Well, I sure hope they were. I hope they were. They should be. Peter doesn't know what to say, you remember. So he just blurts something out. This is really good that we're here. Let's make 3 booths, one for you, one for you, and one for you. He just talks because he doesn't know what to say. And sometimes you and I don't know what to say either. God is too much and too great and too astounding. And so we try to say something. We try to say some kind of something. Maybe that's why we babble on about God having a plan, or everything happening for a reason, or why somebody died, or how God did this or God didn't do that thing. Because we've seen all the God that we can bear. And we really don't get it, and we really don't know what to say. Maybe it's why politicians think they better say something about God, or you won't vote for them. Because we don't know any better than to try and take a great big God and get that God shoved somehow into our political biases and schemes. I remember several years ago, somebody who knows about such matters said to me, he said, "Your sermons are theological." That is to say, they're primarily about God. It wasn't a compliment, it wasn't a complaint, it was an observation. Your sermons are theological, he said. And you know, every preacher's sermons are something. They're one thing or another. They might as well be theological as anything, I figure. I studied theology, after all. In seminary, my favorite classes were always theology. My sermons might as well be theological. Might as well try to say something about God. And maybe that's what preaching is. Maybe it's the attempt to say something intelligible about something unintelligible. Something understandable about something we really don't understand. So I stand here and I talk for a little while because I don't know what else to do with God. Silence is just too awkward. But sometimes I wonder if you and I aren't better off to just stand here in complete silence. Just in silence and let God be God. To simply be astounded by the greatness of God. To smile or laugh or cry or breathe or something else you can't even really describe, though it has nothing at all to do with words. Because it's just all too much. God is just too much. Maybe that's why we come to church, really. Maybe that's why. Maybe that's the secret we ourselves hardly even knew, because we thought maybe that we came for answers. Or we thought maybe that we came to try to get our lives together. Or maybe we thought we came to learn some helpful rules or some tips on how to live well. Maybe we thought we came to hear the preacher talk about a vision for the church. Maybe we thought we came to take out an insurance policy for eternity. Maybe we thought we came so our kids wouldn't end up a mess. I don't know. But it turns out that we came, in fact, to get a glimpse of God. To get a glimpse of the one God, the only God, something mysterious, something too great for words. A God who leaves us not really knowing what to say. Sometimes I see it on the face of a baby when I've got the baby in one hand and my other hand is in the baptismal waters, and I feel the water on my hand, and I look at the baby and I look at that baby in the face, and I can hardly breathe. Sometimes I catch just a little glimpse on the face of somebody old. And they know they're old. They know their days are numbered. And they're content. And they're satisfied. And it's okay. And I'm amazed by that. Sometimes I feel it down deep inside when we're all singing together and I can hardly stifle back the tears. And I want us to just sing and sing and sing. Sing. All I know is that we can really handle all this God the best in the face of Jesus. We can bear this God in the form of one who invites us to the table with our open hands. The one who knows everything about us and embraces us. The one who knows where our deepest hunger really is and who feeds us in just that place. Jesus, who was broken for us and who bled for us and who took his every breath, even his last breath, for us. And it's almost more God than we can bear. Almost. But we get up. We get up and we file out of here.